The Unshakable Mind, a Buddhist approach to mental fortitude in modern chaos. Have you ever noticed how some people seem completely unfazed by life's chaos, while others crumble at the smallest criticism? What if I told you that mental strength isn't about suppressing emotions or building walls around your heart, but about developing a radically different relationship with the storms that inevitably blow through your life? Today, we're going deep into an ancient Buddhist framework that reveals why most of what we call mental toughness is actually mental rigidity, and how true strength comes from flexibility, not force. By the end of this conversation, you'll understand why the strongest minds aren't the ones that never bend, they're the ones that bend without breaking. Let's explore what the Buddha called the 8 worldly conditions and how mastering your response to them creates an unshakable foundation for your entire life.
Before we dive into the practical strategies, we need to understand something fundamental that most mental strength advice completely misses. There's a profound difference between being mentally tough and being mentally strong. Our culture glorifies toughness, the ability to grit your teeth and power through, to never show weakness, to dominate challenges through sheer force of will. But here's what nobody tells you. Toughness eventually cracks. It has to, because it's based on resistance, and whatever you resist persists. Mental strength, on the other hand, operates on an entirely different principle. It's not about resisting the waves, it's about learning to surf them. The Buddha illustrated this with the image of a massive rock standing unmoved as storms rage around it. But notice what he didn't say. He didn't say the rock fights the storm. He didn't say the rock tries to stop the wind. The rock simply exists in its nature, completely unshaken, while the storm does what storms do. This is the foundational insight we're building everything else on today.
Now, the Buddha identified what he called the 8 worldly conditions, and understanding these is absolutely critical because these 8 things are the source of nearly all our mental and emotional turbulence. They come in 4 pairs of opposites: praise and blame, gain and loss, fame and disgrace, pleasure and pain. Think about your own life for a moment. When was the last time you felt genuinely disturbed, anxious, angry, or destabilized? I'd bet everything that your disturbance traces back to one of these 8 conditions. Maybe someone blamed you when you expected praise. Maybe you experienced a loss when you were counting on a gain. Maybe you felt disgrace when you were seeking recognition. Here's the profound truth the Buddha taught. These 8 conditions are not problems to be solved. They are the fundamental texture of human existence. You will experience all 8 of them repeatedly for your entire life. The question isn't how to avoid them, it's how to remain centered while they swirl around you. Let me share something that radically changed my understanding of this. Most people approach mental strength as if it's about building armor, layer upon layer of protection, so nothing can hurt you. But armor is heavy. Armor restricts your movement. Armor requires constant maintenance, and eventually someone finds the weak spot. The Buddhist approach is completely different. Instead of building armor, you develop spaciousness. Instead of hardening yourself against pain, you expand your capacity to hold both pain and joy without being controlled by either. Think of your mind like a vast sky. Clouds pass through, some dark and heavy, some light and beautiful. But the sky itself is never damaged by the clouds. The sky doesn't fight the clouds. It doesn't try to push them away. It simply remains sky, vast and open, while weather patterns come and go. This spaciousness, this is what we're cultivating. So, how do we actually develop this quality in practical terms? The first practice is what I call strategic acceptance. And this is where most people completely misunderstand what acceptance means. Acceptance doesn't mean you like what's happening. It doesn't mean you're passive or weak. It doesn't mean you don't take action to change things. Strategic acceptance means you start by clearly seeing and acknowledging what is actually true right now, without the distortion of denial, without the fantasy of how things should be different. Here's why this matters. You cannot respond effectively to a situation you're refusing to see clearly. When someone criticizes you and your immediate reaction is defensive denial, you've already lost your center. You're in reaction mode, which means they're controlling your state. But if you can pause and practice strategic acceptance, you might think something like this. This person is expressing criticism. I'm noticing I feel defensive. My body is tensing and I want to lash out. All of that is true right now. By accepting the truth of this moment, you create a tiny gap between stimulus and response. And in that gap, you reclaim your power. This connects directly to the second practice, the discipline of discernment. You must train yourself to constantly distinguish between what is in your control and what is outside your control. This sounds simple, but watch how quickly people violate this principle. Someone posts something negative about you online. You cannot control what they posted. You cannot control how other people interpret what they posted. You cannot control whether it spreads or gets ignored. All of that is outside your circle of control. But here's what is inside your circle: your interpretation of what it means, your emotional response to it, your decision about whether to engage or ignore, your actions moving forward, your commitment to your own values regardless of external opinions. When you invest your mental and emotional energy in things outside your control, you guarantee your own suffering. It's like trying to change the weather by complaining about it. The weather doesn't care about your complaints, but you can control whether you bring an umbrella. This discernment practice is absolutely foundational. Every single day, multiple times a day, you need to ask yourself, is this in my control or outside my control? And then act accordingly. Now we need to talk about resilience, because there's a dangerous myth about resilience that's actually making people weaker. The myth says that resilient people don't fall down, they don't get hurt, they don't feel pain. That's nonsense. Everyone falls, everyone gets hurt. Pain is universal. Resilience isn't about not falling, it's about how quickly you get back up. It's about the elasticity of your recovery. Think about a tree in a storm. The rigid tree that refuses to bend, that tree snaps. But the flexible tree that bends deeply with the wind, that tree survives. Resilience is flexibility plus recovery speed. So when you experience one of those 8 worldly conditions, when someone blames you unjustly, when you suffer a significant loss, when you experience public embarrassment, you will feel it. A strong mind doesn't deny the feeling. A strong mind feels it fully, processes it consciously, and then deliberately returns to center. This is a trainable skill. You can literally practice recovering faster from emotional disturbances. Start noticing your patterns. How long do you typically stay angry after someone offends you? Hours? Days? Once you notice the pattern, you can consciously work to shorten the cycle, not by suppressing the anger, but by fully feeling it, understanding its message, and then releasing it. Here's a practice that will accelerate your resilience development: the practice of intentional perspective shifting. When something difficult happens, your brain automatically generates a narrative about what it means. Usually, that narrative is something like, this is terrible, this shouldn't have happened, this is unfair, why does this always happen to me? That narrative creates suffering on top of the pain that already exists. But you can train yourself to deliberately generate alternative narratives. Not false positive thinking, but genuine alternative perspectives. For example, if you lose a job, the automatic narrative might be, I'm a failure, I'll never succeed, my career is over. An alternative perspective might be, This is an unexpected opportunity to reassess what I actually want, to potentially find something better aligned with my values, to develop skills I've been wanting to learn. Both narratives are looking at the same facts, but they create completely different emotional and psychological states. The practice is this. Whenever something disturbing happens, force yourself to generate at least 3 different ways of interpreting what it means. This breaks the tyranny of your automatic narrative and restores your agency. You're not denying reality. You're recognizing that reality contains multiple truths simultaneously, and you have some choice about which truth you emphasize. Now we need to address something critical that most mental strength advice completely ignores: the role of self-compassion. There's this pervasive belief that mental strength requires being hard on yourself, that self-criticism is motivating, that you need to be your own harshest critic to push yourself to excellence. This is not only wrong, it's actively counterproductive. Research consistently shows that self-compassion, not self-criticism, is what enables sustainable high performance and genuine resilience. Here's why. When you fail or make a mistake and you respond with harsh self-criticism, what happens? You feel worse. When you feel worse, your cognitive function decreases, your creativity drops, your problem-solving ability weakens. You've just made yourself less capable of addressing the situation effectively. But when you respond to failure with self-compassion, when you treat yourself the way you'd treat a good friend who's struggling, something different happens. You maintain your equilibrium. You stay resourceful. You can think clearly about what went wrong and what to do differently. Self-compassion doesn't mean letting yourself off the hook. It means maintaining your own well-being while you honestly assess the situation and take responsibility for improvement. Let me give you a daily practice that builds self-compassion while simultaneously strengthening your mind. Every morning, before you check your phone, before you dive into the demands of the day, take 60 seconds to set an intention. Not a goal, an intention. The intention is this: today, no matter what happens, I will treat myself with the same kindness I would offer to someone I deeply love. Today, I will not absorb other people's negativity as if it's my own. Today, I will remember that I am not my thoughts, I am not my emotions, I am the awareness that witnesses them. This simple practice, repeated daily, creates a foundation. You're programming your mind to default to compassion rather than criticism, to spaciousness rather than contraction. And here's what's interesting. When you stop absorbing other people's negativity, when you stop taking every criticism as a referendum on your worth, you're not being defensive or closed. You're actually being discerning. You're recognizing that other people's opinions are filtered through their own experiences, biases, and pain. Sometimes criticism contains useful information. Sometimes it's just someone else's suffering being projected outward. You can listen without absorbing. You can consider without collapsing. Finally, let's talk about the practice that ties everything together: daily mind training through intentional challenge. Your mind is like a muscle. It doesn't get stronger through comfort. It gets stronger through progressive challenge. But most people only train their minds accidentally, through whatever random difficulties life throws at them. What if you approached it intentionally? What if you deliberately practiced staying centered in increasingly challenging situations? Start small. If someone cuts you off in traffic, instead of automatically reacting with anger, use it as a training opportunity. Notice the surge of emotion. Name it: anger. Feel where it lives in your body. Breathe into it. Then, consciously choose your response. Maybe you respond with compassion. That person might be rushing to an emergency. Maybe you respond with humor. Wow, they really needed to get wherever they're going. The specific response doesn't matter as much as the fact that you chose it consciously rather than reacting automatically. As you get better at this with small challenges, you increase the difficulty. Practice receiving criticism without defending. Practice experiencing disappointment without spiraling. Practice sitting with discomfort without immediately trying to fix or escape it. This is how you build an unshakable mind, through thousands of small moments of choosing awareness over reactivity, choosing spaciousness over contraction, choosing your values over your impulses.
The truth is, mental strength isn't a destination you arrive at. It's a practice you return to again and again, every single day. Some days you'll embody it beautifully. Some days you'll forget everything and react like you've learned nothing. Both days are part of the practice. The Buddha's image of the rock unmoved by the storm isn't about achieving some permanent state of invulnerability. It's about developing the capacity to return to your center, no matter how many times you get knocked off it. That's the practice. That's the path. And the beautiful thing is, every single moment gives you another opportunity to practice. Every criticism, every disappointment, every unexpected challenge is actually an invitation to strengthen your mind. Not by resisting, not by hardening, but by remaining flexible, spacious, and compassionate while the storms of life do what storms do. You don't need to fight the 8 worldly conditions. You just need to stop being shaken by them. And that, my friends, is how you build a mind that nothing can disturb.